Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Entire Day Arena podcast. Today, we're pleased to be joined by someone who I consider a very great and powerful guest due to what she has been doing, using her story and her journey to positively impact and help other people. And that's something I consider very courageous and very great actually. So without wasting so much of our time, I would like you to introduce yourself so the audience can get familiar with you a little bit.
Okay, hi. My name is Ehimwenma Bello-Osagie, and I'm a wife, a mom of three children. I have two daughters and a son. And I think the reason why I am here is because I have recently talked about my son who was diagnosed with autism.
Yeah, welcome. And yeah, that's exactly the reason why we're here today. So I actually became very aware of you on social media. I was on Tunde Ednot's page actually. I was scrolling down and I saw a video of you talking about your experience, your journey with your autistic son. And then I went to your page and I saw you were creating awareness around it and trying to help other people with your experience. And that's why I really wanted to talk to you here today. So I guess my first question would be, why did you really decide to make that move? What happened?
Okay, I recently moved back to Nigeria, and I've lived almost all my life in the UK. And being that I have a son who lives with autism, I it exposed me to a lot of people, and I came to realize that people do not understand what autism is, because I realized anybody I met, I was literally educating. So I had to just take a seat back and think. I think there is not enough awareness out there. Somebody has to create a platform and educate these people, because it can be anybody.
Exactly. I totally agree with that. And I think creating such a platform, how has the response been from the public since you started?
It has been overwhelming,
Hmm. Okay.
very. I remember when after I posted my first video, I got to a point where I started thinking, oh my God, can I do this? I
Hmm.
had too many DMs. I had too many people who have been almost like literally dying in silence.
Hmm.
So here's this lady who's come out, boldly spoken about her experience with her son. They felt they could relate.
Yeah. And the people who were reaching out to you, they were actually in the same situation and they were trying to get help and pointers of what to do.
Most of them were, a mother's instinct when you're suspecting something isn't adding up. Some of them had gotten diagnoses, but some were just saying, oh my God, the signs, what are the signs? And immediately I dropped my second, third video. I started getting DMs like, oh my God, my daughter exhibits all the signs. My son exhibits most of the signs. Where do I go? Where do I turn? What do I do? I'm talking about, it was not just from Nigeria, it was literally Lagos, Benin, Ogun State, Canada, England, South Africa, Cameroon, all over.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's people always talk about the fact that social media has been reading with maybe some unnecessary things. But I keep encouraging people that people's life has tremendously changed on social media and great change can be made. It doesn't matter if
Yeah.
it's not a very popular page, you don't have a big following or things like that. You can be in your own small space and be highly effective and very positively impactful to the society at large. So I encourage people who have whatever story to tell, who have anything they feel they have to offer, they should just go ahead and put it out there, and they can be changing the lives of millions of people. If actually,
Mm-hmm.
So coming back to your own story, um, can you remember how old your son was when he got diagnosed with autism?
He was 2 years, 3 months.
Okay, 2 years, 3 months. And what actually prompted you to get him screened?
He he did a lot of things that I couldn't explain for his age.
Okay.
Remember, I have 3 children, so I'm not a first time mom. And he's not my first, he's my last. My firstborn is 16 years old, so I've been in the game for a long time.
Yeah.
I knew there was something not adding up, not in a bad way, but he was just the way he looked at things. He didn't look at things like a child or like a baby. My son started reading at the age before he was 2 years old.
Oh, wow.
Because he could read, I neglected the fact that when you ask him his name or how are you, he wouldn't respond to say fine,
Hmm.
which was not normal. It wasn't typical, let me put it that way. And he started nursery very early. So one day, I got a call from school and said we need to have a meeting, and then went into the meeting and they said, "Do you know your son reads?" I'm like, "Okay, really? Yes, I know, but I thought because he was already in school, he was taught in school, and the school is telling me no. I thought he learned from home. You taught him. I didn't teach this boy nothing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was self-taught." So his teachers also told me he doesn't give eye contact. I said, yes, I've noticed that. And they said, oh, children who don't give eye contact, you have to pay attention. I'm like, pay attention in what way? He tiptoes. Yes, I know. But I didn't see them as signs of anything because each time he tiptoed around me, I had made a comment saying, if he was a girl, I would register him for ballet lessons because he could stand on those toes for hours and walk on them.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So at some point, I remember I used to live in the UK. So in England, when you give birth, you are assigned a health visitor. So her duty is to, when you're discharged from the hospital, she follows you home and monitors the baby for weeks. Then when she discharges from coming home, she still keeps calling you to check on the milestone of the child. So that was the first person I complained to. I got in contact with a pediatric doctor, and from there they said, okay, we have to have him assessed. But before they gave me a date for assessment, I already knew there was something different about my son. There was something unique about him. And I have a brother who's a medical doctor. So I called my brother and I told him, I have something is different about my son. And he said, do not call what isn't. Your son just strikes me like a very intelligent boy. And I said, okay. But being the curious mom that I am, I took to Google. I remember everything I have seen him do. At that point, I started paying attention to everything he was doing. And I listed everything, and that was the first time I came across the word. I have heard of autism before, but have never really paid attention about autism. I knew back then they were people that had a few challenges or something, but I never really understood. So that was when I got this questionnaire asking me to fill the questions and see. And there were like 20 questions. And it said, tick the box if you show signs of any of this. I was obviously answering for my son.
Mm-hmm.
And if I remember, my son must have ticked 13 or 14 out of 20. That was like, oh, wow, okay, there's something here. So I had already read about autism, started Googling, trying to understand, just doing my research before I got a diagnosis. So by the time I got referred to a pediatric doctor, I had a meeting, and now we were in lockdown in the UK, and they booked an appointment. I had three. There was a neurosurgeon, there was a child psychologist. There were like three of them. They did about an hour and a half assessment because with autism, it's not a disease, it's not what can be tested in the blood or anything. It's
Mm-hmm.
just to observe patterns of behavior. So they had to watch him and just see how he plays with items, how he interacts, communicates, what he's doing. And 3 days later, they called me and said, have you heard of the word autism? And I said, yes. And they said, your son is autistic.
Wow. And looking back at that, do you remember what your first reaction was when you actually got that confirmation? Because you, like you said, you already had your suspicion.
I cried. I only cried because I already knew. So it was like, you're just confirming what I know. It was a confirmation of what I had suspected, what I had Googled and read about, even if I didn't have the qualifications to diagnose my child. So just hearing them say what I had already suspected just brought tears down my eyes.
Oh, wow. And
Yeah.
I guess there was an adjusting period, right? So how was that adjusting phase for you, not just you, but you and your entire family?
Ooh, okay. There was nothing like denial or accepting because I had already made my research.
Okay.
So at that point, I didn't have doubts. I was not in shock. There was nothing. I just literally swung into what can be done, trying to understand how do we move forward. And I remember after the diagnosis, I spoke to my brother, and he said, what type of ASD does your son have? I asked them and they told me, oh, England, we just generalize them now. We don't separate them. It's just ASD. And he said, oh, really? It would have been easier if because they have Asperger's, they have the Rett, they're just different branches. And there's the savant. And he said, I said, I don't. I said, but he's very intelligent. But I remember what I was told in the words of the doctors. They said he has more advantages than disadvantages. So
Yeah.
and knowing my son, that just gave me courage and hope.
Yeah. You did mention earlier that you're a mother of three. So how and I not even without asking so much or hearing you say it, I know the adjusting period required you to pay more attention to your son, like you rightly said. So how was that
Mhm.
interfering with you being a parent to the two other of your kids? Or did that play
Okay,
any role at all?
it was, I'm going to be very honest, it was easy because my daughters are big.
Mm-hmm.
They are old enough, they are independent. So what I really got was support
Mm.
and assistance from them, understanding that we have to mold and guide and support their younger brother. They understood it. And also my husband, we all just like swung into action. But I will say it was a bit, you can forget yourself
Mm.
in the process. So there were times where even when my son did something, I blamed the girls, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You're supposed to understand he's a baby, I just I just blame the girls for it. But over the years I've come to understand they also need me
Mm.
as much as my son needs me.
Yeah.
But we were able to come together because they were a lot older and they understood.
Yeah, I guess the first instinct is like he's the most vulnerable one, so everybody needs to cater to him, and sometimes that
Everybody's
kind
just
of
going to guide and protect,
yes,
shield.
Yes, yes, yes. Was there ever a time where maybe you kind of like your older kids came with you, talking about maybe you were paying more attention to him or they needed you more, things like that?
No,
Yeah, I'm glad they
no,
understand.
but my middle daughter always says one thing: your favorite child.
Oh wow.
She still says it to date. Ah, your favorite child. Your favorite child. Clearly he's your favorite child. I keep telling her, no. So clearly there's something I might be doing without knowing that makes her feel that way. But then I don't want to say I blackmail her. I tell her, well, you're daddy's girl. Then we just laugh over it.
Yeah, yeah, I totally understand that. Um, you talked about you swung into action immediately. You got you got the diagnosis and it was confirmed. So, can you talk about some of the steps you actually took to help him and to make things easier
Okay,
for him?
okay. In England, they told me he needed therapy. And because he was already in school, um, we had to get like a facilitator to be with him while he was in nursery because he didn't really pay attention to other children. So remember, he's under 3, they are still in junior nursery. They do activities like circle time, nursery rhyme. While his peers are doing all that, my son would rather want to be by himself playing and just not paying attention to everybody. So they needed, while all the other teachers were getting those kids in their activity, they needed someone who could be with him, guide him, especially for the fact that he wasn't really aware of his environment, what was a danger and what wasn't. So he had a one-to-one facilitator in school. At home, we just had to make sure we were always around him. But he was and he is still very independent. So that was another good thing about him, which also was like a hindrance because he felt he could do all these things, so he didn't need to ask for it. But I needed him to ask me, talk to me.
Yeah, I can almost imagine what that situation is like. Um, Can you talk about what treatment or therapy you think has been the most effective in a positive way for him?
Okay. Uh, Before I left England, I'm going to be very honest. Lockdown, COVID did a lot of damage to the world.
Yeah, I did.
So things that were readily available became luxury.
Hmm.
The speech and language therapists, you couldn't find any. My son had one privately done. And if I can remember, the therapist told me she really couldn't help me because my son was too intelligent. I didn't really understand what that meant. Yes. So I started thinking, I'm on a waiting list. I'm not getting my services. And because of the lockdown and COVID, therapy is what needs to be done one to one.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting therapists telling you online. You can't even get this boy to sit down and pay attention. So how do you think you'll be productive?
Mm-hmm.
So that was when my husband and I decided, you know what? Why don't we try Nigeria?
Oh.
Although I didn't just wake up and move. This might not be part of my question, but it aligns. When you are faced with certain things in life, you become spiritual.
Hmm.
I'm a Christian. I put God first in everything I do. And I see everything in my life, no matter how negative it might look, I see it as a blessing. I believe there's always a reason for everything. So I turned to praying. And I remember praying to God and telling God that I see He has blessed me with a wonderful child, yet there are a few challenges. But you see, aside those challenges, I see greatness. I need him to guide me so that I can bring out the best out of this child. Because I could see that my son was special. I see there was something great, even if he wasn't doing what typical children were doing. But there were so many things he was doing that was above an average child. So I prayed and I said, I need him to guide me to make decisions. And I started praying. And it came to a point where I wanted to apply for a reception class for my son in the UK. And I had said I wasn't going to go to the state system only because in the state system, they have 30 kids in a class and
Mm,
maybe one or two teachers.
mm,
In the private sector, they have 15 kids. So my child is already struggling to understand his surrounding. Now I want him to go and be in the midst of 30 children. I would rather him being in a smaller group.
yeah.
All the private schools I applied to came back with a no. They didn't care if my son could read. They didn't care his high IQ was above other children, just for the fact that he wouldn't acknowledge the presence of other children or communicate to them or interact or answer questions when they wanted him to. They told me no. That was a sign of, I took it as a sign of God telling me, you don't belong here. That was the moment I decided, go back to Nigeria. And I came back. I came back last year. I found a place and my son started almost immediately. Because he'd been assessed in the UK, I brought his report and everything,
Hmm.
and he started almost immediately. So he does speech and language therapy, he does swimming, he does music, he's very musical, he does activities. There was like a one-to-one session for him for mending and prompting him to do things. And I kid you not, in less than 2 months, I saw a difference in my child.
Wow.
I noticed he was paying more attention. He was, even though he wasn't really saying much, he was still singing. But when you called him, he turned, he looked at you. But today, you call his name, he can tell you his name. How are you? He tells you he's fine. He can tell you his age. He can tell you what he wants to eat. So, yes, we're moving forward.
Yes, and I must say, congratulations, and I hope it just keeps getting better from here onwards. One of the things I've heard you consistently said during the course of this interview, during the course of this conversation, rather, is you talk about how his IQ is above average and how he keeps doing things that are spectacular or that are amazing to watch. So can you talk about some of those things that some of those traits he displays that makes you feel like, oh wow, he's truly special?
Okay, there's a particular one that I can never forget. This is when we were in London. He was still a baby. I can't remember the age. My son has done so many things that I got to a point where I had my phone ready. Because there are things where you go out and tell people you could be called a liar,
Yeah, that's
especially
true.
when you see the age of the child.
Hmm.
So even there were things he did that I couldn't tell my siblings or my husband, except immediately I'm saying it, I'm presenting a video and like, look at that video. But this particular one, I didn't have my phone. So my son, he is very attentive. His attention to detail, oh my God, is out of this world. So I noticed whenever I'm in my kitchen, he's always looking at me and looking at what I'm doing. So I have a kitchen cabinet in my kitchen, a kitchen cupboard. You know those side cupboards when you pull the door, a tray swings out, like the corner ones.
Yes, yes, yes,
And I
yes.
notice whenever I'm in that particular cupboard, he's always looking at me. So one day I was in my living room and I was hearing a sound in the kitchen. So now, mind you, normally with my girls, When I meet them doing something, I stop them immediately. It's just the instincts of a mother.
Mm-hmm.
But being that my son was unique, whenever I met him doing something, I stood back to watch. Because I kid you not, I learn from him every day. I learn something new. So why when I walked into the kitchen, I can remember he was crawling. So which means either he had just started walking or he was still crawling. So I'm gonna guess he was between the ages of like 9 to 13 months because he walked at 13. I noticed he had pulled that cupboard. And I'm like, what is this boy doing? He pulled it, crawled into the cupboard. He pulled the cupboard like he was closing it. So now, when you're closing the cupboard, there's this metal tray is collapsing. And when you push it open, that metal extends. My son was touching the metal. He would push the cupboard, the metal extend. He would pull it, the thing would collapse. Then he was touching the screws. And I'm like, no, this is not possible. Is he trying to figure out the mechanism, like the functionality behind this cupboard? And he knew that cupboard was different from every other cupboard.
Yeah.
I think that was the moment I was like, no, 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 no. I have something bigger than me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Babies, I kid you not. All a child knows to do with a cupboard is open and close. And after opening and close, it ends up with a cry because they mistakenly lock their finger.
Yeah, that's true.
That that was never my son.
Yeah.
He calculates, even if it's soft close, he has already calculated the time to remove the hand and it's gonna close and it's gonna open. He was just too ahead.
Yeah.
And the fact that he could pronounce any word, I couldn't understand that. How are you able to read but you don't talk to people?
And you're not teaching him how to.
I didn't.
Wow. That's just
I didn't.
amazing. You see, one of the things I actually discovered or I noticed when I was doing research before coming on here to talk to you is, um, I would see parents talking about their own experience and how their child being autistic has actually changed them for good. Actually, that they've become better listeners. Some of them even say they become better parents because it's almost like they become experts in their own child and everything. And they say this with so much joy and so much enthusiasm that me just watching you talk right now is just a clear kind of like representation of what I discovered. So, um, speaking on that, how would you say you've been positively impacted, all in all, by this experience so far?
Being a parent to a child that has autism humbles you. You see life differently. If you thought you knew it all, trust me, you don't know anything. It gives you a new sense of patience you would not know you have.
Hmm.
It gives you patience, it gives you persistence because you see, when you have a child, you are not, when you have a child who you know has greatness, yet with a little bit of challenge, and you are not willing to give up on that child, you will do anything,
Hmm.
almost anything. And for you to be willing to do almost or anything, you have to be patient. You have to keep pushing. I love my son with everything in me. I don't see him less. I don't see him in any other way. All I see is the greatness in him. And I'm speaking with all honesty.
Yeah, I can tell. It's very, very easy to tell. It's very, very easy to tell that. And it's just amazing to watch. And I'm sure people listening to this or just watching you say this would give them a sense of comfort and help them look at the positive side of things if they're going through the same journey and through the same experience. And in the same breath, I would like to ask, how has how has having like what has been the most challenging aspect of this experience and this your journey so far?
To be honest, almost everything is a challenge sometimes
Mm,
because you are dealing or caring for a child who you are trying to make understand something, and sometimes it's just difficult when you don't know how to get across. So there were times where, okay, at first I remember when my mom called me and said, have you started potty training? I said, Mommy, how can I start potty training with a child that I can't even make understand something? Do you get what I mean?
yeah.
Now, for a neurotypical child, potty training is difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how do you start potty training a child who's neurodiverse? So I was very scared because I didn't know when to start until I'll never forget in July. If my friend gets to see this video, she will know I'm talking about her. I went to my friend's birthday. It was in July. And I met another friend of mine, her son. He is also autistic, but he is rather 2 years older than my son, 2 or 3. And I noticed he went into the bathroom by himself. He used the bathroom, flushed the toilet, washed his hands, and he came out. And I went to my friend. I said, Come. I said, I just saw your son went to use the toilet. She said, Yes. I said, How did you do it? She said, hey, don't worry. You think your son is not ready? He's ready. You just have to start. I kid you not. That was the kick I needed. I got home. The next day, I said, No more pull ups. I bought three potties in my house, one in every corner, one by the living room, one by the kitchen door, and the other one in my bedroom. So you can either use the guest toilet, but there was always access.
Mm-hmm.
The first 1 week, yes, there were a few accidents, but I kid you not, after 1 week, that was it.
Oh wow.
That's to tell you the mind these children have. You just have to start something, and
Mm-hmm.
trust me, they will follow suit. So potty training, passing that hurdle, then also after we moved back to Lagos and I heard someone ask him, How are you? And he said, Fine, thank you. Oh my God. I felt I had won the jackpot. It was amazing.
Yeah, it's almost like
It was
all
amazing.
your hard work, all the effort you're putting in, you're seeing that it's not in
Yeah.
vain. Yeah, that's always it's always a very very amazing feeling to see that you're being rewarded for the hard work you're putting in. Um, you talking about your friend's son and how she inspired you to make that move is part of the reason why
Yeah.
conversations like this are very very important. It's part of the reason why
Mm-hmm.
I commend you seriously for putting yourself out there, putting your story out there, and help inspire other people also, because just that little encounter you had and the fact that she was free enough to open up to you and just encourage you, like it changed a lot. So
And I was also willing to learn because I made an observation and asked. Because
exactly.
I was like, he went into the toilet, he flushed the toilet, and he washed his hands.
Yeah.
And I know, how did you do it? So I think that's what it also does to you. You pay attention to everything. Now I'm like a human scanner. I kid you not. I observe everything. I see everything.
Very inquisitive. um yeah, that's you. over the course of this conversation, you've been asking the question, when you ask your son how you doing, or you're very happy when he responds, and now that it's become a normal thing for him. So let me take this moment to also ask you, how are you doing yourself, and how has this whole process, your son's diagnosis, how has it affected your own emotional and mental health? I ask this question because sometimes, we automatically assume that the our caregivers are the strongest amongst us and are just doing fine. We hardly focus on the people we tag, or I don't know, call strong amongst us, and sometimes they're also holding it together, and they also need support. They also need to be seen and to be appreciated. So, how are you doing yourself?
I'm thankful. I'm good.
Yeah, I'm
I
glad.
am. I'm thankful to God because this journey is not for everyone.
Mm,
Trust me when I say this. It's not for the faint-hearted. It can either make or break you. But I have to be honest. I think I'm a very realistic and I'm very honest to myself. I say this with so much confidence, but also I must always say thank you to God because God is above everything. I pray a lot. I get my strength from my prayer. And I'm going to say this, I have seen different types of children with developmental challenges. I have seen that some that are very bad, I've seen the average, I've also seen the good. I am very, very fortunate and blessed that my son's needs are very mild.
mm,
So I want to buttress that. I do not dispute the fact that other people have way worse challenges out there. But you see, for me and for my sanity, I chose to see the goodness out of my son.
mm,
The strengths he has outweighs the, I call them minor challenges because what it is really is he just sees the word different from you and I.
mm-hmm,
It doesn't make him any less.
mm-hmm,
He's not interested in what interests us.
mm-hmm,
So those are his challenges, not wanting to talk to people or not wanting to interact or pay attention to other people, you know. So for me, I chose to look at the bright side. I chose to take his strengths over the little minor weaknesses he has and know that, okay, yes, all these little things with therapy and help can be taken care of. But there are also moments where
mm.
I just wish he didn't have those minor challenges and everything was just rosy. But God has a reason for everything. So, yes, it's hard. I do have my moments. Like I told you when I applied to the school in England, I remember the first no he got. Oh my God, I cried.
Hmm.
I, that tears, it was deep and painful because I was like, how dare you turn my child down? You know? So, yes, it is hard. It's hard. And that is why I think the world should be very receptive and be open because these kids are human beings. Because they see the world different from you and I doesn't make them that much different from us. So imagine a mom who is already struggling at home now takes her son outside. And because he's neurodiverse, he does one thing, everybody starts looking at you.
Mm-hmm.
That mom is already dealing with too much. She doesn't need you to give her the side look. And the painful thing is, children are children. Forget neurotypical, neurodiverse. I've seen children that can be unruly, can be stubborn, but because they don't have any diagnosis, it's okay. But the minute is a child that has ADHD or autism or one thing, and they do exactly what that neurotypical child would do, it is a problem,
Yeah.
you know? So I just pray parents are able to openly and freely speak up than suffering inside.
Yeah.
I have a good support system. My husband is wonderful. My sisters, my brother, my family, my children. So yes, and God gives me strength. And like I've said before, it's when you see the problem before the solution, that is when you feel down. But when you see a solution and you see positive,
Mm-hmm.
you almost forget the negative
Mm-hmm.
and just keep pushing.
Yeah.
But like I said, maybe because my son is on the mild side, it's easy for me to say. But I've seen some children that really have severe autism and all these challenges, and I'm wondering how their parents cope. Because even with my son's mild case, trust me, I do still have my moments. And it's allowed.
Yeah. I'm glad about the last thing you just said. It's allowed. We're all humans. We are all allowed, and we should be able to express ourselves in whatever way we are feeling at any given time instead of bottling things in. You've said a lot actually, from all you just said right now, and I'm really really glad you see what you were, you opened yourself up that much to really talk about how the journey and the experience has been for you. Um, you're right about so many things about, the misconceptions surrounding whatever diagnosis children have or adults or anyone has. What you said about people having a reaction towards, certain diagnosis that people or individual have, or children or anything. Because, take for example, if somebody's exhibiting some sign of, anxiety or some form of depression that you just know, like, and that person is not diagnosed, we easily just say, oh, that person is sad or whatever the case is. But if you know someone has some of a clinical diagnosis of anxiety or something, there's this, all of a sudden, it's like, it's the same thing, but there's this sudden shifts and change
There's
towards
a
that person.
wall.
Exactly.
There's a wall.
Exactly.
The wall
And
just goes up.
yeah, and the way we can actually break that wall, bring it down, is to continue to have open conversations like this, is to continue to normalize it by having open conversations about it. And people would come along, people would change their perspective, people would learn, and they would, actually see what it's like. Even if they are not experiencing that thing, they can actually see what it's like. For that person, and they can maybe start to change some of their biases, because that's what we truly want.
But
That.
open conversation can only happen when they feel they're comfortable. When you're in a safe space, you feel relaxed and you can talk. So it's a two-way street. It's difficult because one, a parent or a family member is scared to have that open conversation because they are worried about how that person will receive and how the behavior might affect them.
Mhm.
Now, if you don't speak, you don't know how that person will behave. So who has to start? It's You have to be bold. It's difficult. It's difficult because there's been this perception of stigmatization, and that has been a factor in people coming out to speak because they wonder how the world or other children will receive their children, how other parents will look at them. You know, we're not very receptive. That has to change
Yeah,
because, believe it or not, children with developmental delay are in a lot of homes. Not until you speak to somebody you would never realize in a lot of homes. You'll be amazed.
I completely agree with this you just said. And a lot of homes, they take the wrong path by sometimes being ashamed of that situation and hiding that child to the corner. There are some families who have children with development delays, like you said, and even their neighbors don't know they have a child like that in the house because they keep that child away. They don't want the child associated with their family. We've seen issues like that. I've seen it firsthand in where I live, actually, and that's why I can actually say that. And to what you said earlier on about who has to come first, like does the person who's affected needs to come forth first, or do we first need to create a safe space and environment? I would say we need to create a safe space and environment first. We need to educate ourselves, even if we're not experts or totally aware of said situation or whatever situation that is or challenge. We just need to start by being compassionate and non-judgmental. I think those,
Empathy.
yeah, I completely agree.
Empathy is all we need.
Yeah, if I,
Understanding.
yeah, that's it. If we're empathetic towards one another, just even in any case at all, just even being nice with somebody you get into a bus with, that a person steps on you and just acknowledging that, oh, it might be a mistake. And instead of just going all out, you like, hey, you stepped on me or something. And just understanding that sometimes people react out of frustration or whatever they are going through. Um, we are all just keeping it together. There's this thing I always say, like, I don't like to get personal too much when on this program, but sometimes it's just okay to be vulnerable myself so people can actually understand where I'm coming from. So I lost my mother 2 years ago. So the day I lost my mom, the next day, me and my sister, we actually got on a bus because we were actually going to do something, right? Mind you, just a couple of hours ago, I had just taken her to the mortuary and everything, and we've done that whole process. And I was in the bus heading somewhere with my sister, and for some reason, I couldn't just imagine I was keeping it together even after what just happened to me. I was in that situation and I was calm. It was like everybody who was seeing me would just see me as in like, oh, he's just going about his day, without actually knowing that something traumatic has actually happened to
Had
this
just
person.
happened.
Has
Yeah.
just happened to this person. So now think of a situation where somebody is, I don't, nothing negative happened to me that day, but like sometimes when I get on a bus, sometimes when I'm in certain situations, when I see people, I always go back to that moment, and I'm just like, just be nice. You don't know what this guy is going through. You don't know what this girl is going through. You don't know what's really happening to them. Some people might actually be on their way to, I don't know, a loved one's deathbed or something. Like a lot is actually going on. And it's just amazing when you hear people's story and you see them on a daily basis. Sometimes you just wonder, how are they keeping it together? How are they really, really doing it? So I think creating a much safer environment and being empathetic, like you said, is the first and great step forward to really, really creating that safe space where people can open up.
Yes, I think because, and this is a fact, we are very self centered. Human beings are very self centered. It's just me. I want to be comfortable. I want to be okay, not caring about the next person. And one thing we never realize is no position is permanent. The role can be reversed. You understand what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You never know. Only God knows. So why don't you, for once, put yourself in that person's position?
Mm-hmm.
Always think. For all you need to do is just think, what if that was me? And until we can really do that, I don't know.
Yeah. Hopefully the more we keep having conversations like this, hopefully the more we open up, and people can actually do better and actually see themselves as, I don't know, we just need to keep playing our part no matter how small it is. So speaking about some of the misconceptions and the stigma surrounding autism, what are some of the misconceptions you've actually noticed that people have that are not true?
That every kind of developmental delay or learning disability is autism. I am tired of you. I kid you not. I've seen a child that looks like the child has Down syndrome, and somebody's telling me, "Oh, that child is autistic." I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Like for real?" People don't know how to differentiate these things.
Hmm.
You see a child exhibiting signs of ADHD, they say it's autism. You see a child with ADD is autism. You see a child with cerebral palsy is autism. Yes, these are all developmental delays. But autism is just a branch. It's just one type of developmental delay. There are many others. But is it that people are not willing to learn, or is it that these parents are also deceiving themselves because of the society they are in? They don't want to divulge, would rather run with autism because autism seems to be one of the mildest of developmental delays. So, who is putting this narrative out there? I don't know, but I've just come to notice. So I one thing I do is I tend to correct people. Like, oh, I know one guy, the daughter is autistic. If you see the way she looks, and I'm like, no, autism doesn't have a look.
Mm.
So that's definitely not autism. I try to correct people, but I hear it all the time. That word autism has been thrown around too much, and it's tiring.
Yeah.
It's tiring because it prevents people from really understanding what autism is.
Yeah, I totally understand from that perspective. And I know you said your son was diagnosed in the UK, right? But just speaking to what you just said now, but given your experience and since you've been here in Nigeria, where would you say is where and whom would you actually recommend for someone or a parent who has suspicion also of their own child, like, because you're talking about an issue where people actually mix these things up together, and it might be something else and people just automatically assume it is something entirely different. So where would you actually say, or where would you recommend that people can actually go to get proper diagnosis so they can actually know what the actual problem is when they want to start tackling and supporting their child?
It's a little bit different in Nigeria. That's what I've come to understand because
Okay.
in the Western world, things are put in place and even teachers in school can just point you in the right direction. But here, because since I started my video, I got a lot of DMs, messages telling me, "Oh, I feel my child has this, but I've been to my doctor. My doctor says everything is fine."
Hmm.
I've noticed that everybody runs quickly to the hospital. Now, mind you, not all medical doctors are trained to diagnose or even know. Now, remember, there are different types of medical doctors. And I believe if you see any doctor that specializes in children, which is a pediatrician,
Mm-hmm.
but also not all pediatric doctors understand developmental milestones, although they do. So in Nigeria, you start with looking for a pediatric doctor, then a child psychologist. That's a very good one.
Mm-hmm.
A child psychiatrist is another one because child psychiatry, it's kind of like they look at the human mind, the pattern and how it works, and when it comes to developmental delays or struggles, is the mindset of how they see things. Then a pediatric neurologist or a anyone who specializes in developmental milestones for children. Those are definitely your best bets. But also, I have come across a few therapists who have also trained to give diagnosis in Nigeria. I
Mm-hmm.
cannot point you in any direction because I found out my own in the UK, but I have seen and I have heard of a few of those.
Okay.
But not just walk into a hospital and saying I want to see a doctor because my son is not or my child is not talking. Nah, you won't get solution from that.
Yeah, thank you very much. So you're saying people should do more research and they should their first stop should be a pediatric doctor. They should start from there, take it up, and try and get a child psychologist, and they can hopefully get a better direction from there onwards. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you saying that, and I'm really hoping that is some use. That's very useful information for people who may be listening. So, what are some of the things that you know right now about your son's conditions that you wish you had known earlier?
That they are more of visual learners. That is a fact. So, if you are trying to guide your child who has a developmental delay and you are talking, just know that your words might not mean anything. While you are talking, either you look for a way to demonstrate or look for a clip that is saying almost the same thing. They process the video and the audio together, and it gets they get the message a lot quicker. That is one thing that I learned that I wish I knew from the very beginning, that they were more visual learners. But yes.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. Um, One of the things I actually saw you said in one of your videos online, one of your videos is like you talked about a situation whereby every child is unique, and that was something really, really positive because you were making mention of we don't need to um, relegate a child to just their diagnosis, like their individual. You talked about the individuality aspect of your child a lot, and I really appreciate that. So, with that in mind, can you like really talk about your son as an individual? Because I think sometimes when we have conversations like this in public, we, like I said, we just relegate or we put the person or the group of people in just one box. Oh, they're autistic. Oh, he has ADHD. We don't tend to look at the person as an individual. Like you rightly said, if a child who doesn't have diagnosis, any form of diagnosis, exhibits a certain character, we look at those. That's just a child. They're doing baby things or something. And if it's the reverse, that is something else entirely. So I would really, really appreciate it a lot if you don't mind, if you can talk about your son, the individual, what you see in him, and I don't know, things like that, basically.
Okay, my son is he's very intelligent. Like I've said this before, he's self-taught. He loves alphabets. He loves to read. He loves to put words together. He loves music. Oh my God, my son hears a song today, he's singing it the next day. He's very musical. He he loves to play. He is a sprinter. My son he's athletic. So I would say he's a jack of all trade. He's intelligent, he loves music, he's athletic, he has everything. So you see what I mean by I saw the strength before I saw those minor challenges.
Yeah, exactly.
There's so much out there in him. There's so much in him that's those how are you fine? I knew we're gonna come later. It
Yeah.
was never really an issue for me. And I say this with all confidence. People always, I'm like, I had this, I felt this sense of people were feeling sorry for me. Don't feel sorry for me. In reverse, I might be the one feeling sorry for you. Please don't. It's the
Yeah.
truth.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot.
It's the
Yeah,
truth.
because we're always quick to just put people in this bracket or something like that. And it stops us from seeing the personality and the real traits of people and who they are. Like, when we want to easily dismiss somebody, we'll just say, oh, that person is this, or that person is that, ignoring the fact that other than whatever you're tagging them as, they are individuals, they're human beings, and they have their needs, they have their wants, they have their interests, and they have their goals and aspirations. So all these things are very, very important when we're having conversations like this. If you ask me, to to have a wholesome conversation, to put everything on the table so as not to stigmatize or just create some kind of negative how would I put this, or some kind of negative narrative around such conversations. And that's why I asked that question. I'm really glad you answered it. Um, so what would you say, we initially, previously we talked about the situation where parents can actually get diagnosis, maybe through going through a child doctor and going to a child therapist and the rest of it. So what are some of the advice that you would give to a parent who recently got that diagnosis and they've confirmed that, oh, my child has this or that development delay? So what would be the advice that you'd actually give to such parents?
Nothing is impossible. Nothing is impossible.
Yeah.
No matter what you have been told, no matter what the report came as, you speak it into existence and put in the work. Patience. You have to be patient. It's not going to happen overnight. You have to be persistent. You have to be loving.
Hmm.
You have to love that child as much as you love. If you have other children, you have to love that child as much as you love other children. Because the truth is, they know, they
Hmm.
feel it, they sense it. They know those that love them and those that don't. And you see, when there is love, the child will blossom.
Hmm.
That child will blossom.
Yeah.
Patience. Don't be in denial. If you've gotten a report, accept it. Because the earlier you accept it, the earlier you swing into action and get the things done. And early diagnosis, it is key.
Hmm.
It might look like you feel like you're not doing the right thing because you will do so many things over and over and over and over again. Or it's repetition. You just keep repeating the same procedure and over. And one day you'll be amazed when your son starts or your daughter starts talking and telling you all these things. You just
Yeah.
have to be persistent and patient and love. That is it.
Yeah.
And do
Uh,
not care what anybody says out there. Because you know why? You are thinking about someone else's impression about you. They are training their own children and moving on with their life. But you are putting your own life on hold because you are thinking, what would people say? No, put in the work and shock the world. That is it.
Yeah, thank you very, very much. I really appreciate that a lot because just like I said earlier on, I've seen a situation where a family has a child with some developmental delay and they just put that child to the corner. They hit that child from the world, basically. And you're talking about a situation whereby what that child needs is total love, commitment, dedication. And I can almost think about it like a flower. Just imagine you have a flower and you keep it in a dark room without sunlight, without water and nurturing.
Exactly.
What happens to that flower?
That
It di-
plant will die.
dies off. But when you bring that flower to the light and you nurture it, it grows, it blossoms, it becomes what it's
You
really
have
supposed to
just
be.
said it. That is exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And
So
see, one thing I also want to add, I'm sorry,
no, no, go
is
on.
how the world sees you treat your child is how they will accept your child.
Hmm.
If they see you as someone who is ashamed of your child, they will help you put that child in a box where that child, you get what I mean. But
Yeah.
when they see that you do not joke with that child,
Hmm.
that child is your pride and joy, everybody will fall in line. Trust me.
Thank you
So
very
it
much.
starts from you, the parent. How you present your child to the world is how the world will receive your child.
Yeah, I think that
That's
was
it.
really really needed. I can't. There's nothing more I can say to that. So just rounding up the conversation. Is that we've spoken about things parents can actually do to help support the child as soon as they find out, or any child at all. So what would you say are some of the things you would advise parents not to do or to avoid when they are dealing with a child that has developmental delays?
This is advice I'm about to give. I'm guilty of it, but hey, you see, it's difficult to give advice because everything is a learning rope.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But
I
that's more of the reason why you should give advice, because it's something you've actually experienced yourself and you've
I
dealt
was
with.
going to say, be careful how you seek advice or seek information. But if you don't seek advice and seek information, how will you get the right support? But in my own quest, I have now reached a point where even when I seek advice or information, I might end up not using it. So it's finding a balance, knowing where to draw the line, because trust me, you can go overboard trying to search for something just because you are willing to do anything. And one thing you must always know and remember, not all children with autism are the same. No matter how similar my child is with that person's child. Because, like, all human beings are not the same. Neurotypical children, or not all of them are the same. So I have come to notice that when I talk to a lot of other parents who have kids on the spectrum, and they tell me how their child has just blossomed, and I'm asking, what did you do? At what point did you do this? At what point did you do this? I'm trying to get all those information so I can include them. I have done quite a few, but there are some things that are so drastic that I have come to a place where I tell myself, hold on, have you seen that child? How are you sure that child's needs is equally like your child? So you don't want to go and overdo something that your child might not need. It's difficult. So I would say seek all the help information you can get, but you as the parent has to know when to stop and say, okay, this is the length I can go, and I think this is just working for me. If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's difficult to give advice because there was a point that I bought. If you call me and say your child used this, I'm ordering it. I will buy. I will buy. I will buy. I'm willing to try. But I'm not at that place where I've now come to realize, no, 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 no. I've come. There was a diet recently that somebody told me about. It's called the GAPS diet. I had already started dreaming of it. I paid for consultation. I met with the lady and I spoke, and she gave me everything. We were in the meeting for over an hour, 30 minutes, and she told me everything and told me all the ingredients and everything to get. I kid you not, the next day I woke up almost depressed. I'm not joking. I woke up, my husband noticed I was in a mood. I had never been in a state like that in my life. Mind you, the day before, I just decided I was starting this diet because somebody that referred it told me how her child's life has transformed. But I'm thinking about the things they put in place and the things they did. I'm asking myself, can you do this? Can you go through this? Can you really go to this length? So I got into a place where I was feeling like, oh my God, I have sang that song that I would do everything. But yet, this is looking impossible for me to do because I could not put my head around it. I went into a mood that I remember my sister calling me that day, and I'm not going to lie to you. I said, I'm having a meltdown. And she said, what is wrong? And I said, I think is that diet. I don't think I can do it. I don't think I can do it. I thought I could do it. I don't think I can do it. And I'm not going to lie to you. The minute I told myself, you know what, these diets, I'm not going to do it, and my son is fine, I got myself back. But I took some things out of that diet that I was willing to change. But for me to strictly go into it fully, it was almost eating me up. My son is very picky with food. He doesn't eat a lot of food. My son is 5, he's going to be 6 years old. Up until December, my son's diet was Quaker oats, Weetabix, Indomie noodle, cereal. That is all he eats. Morning, afternoon, evening, every day. Morning after he wouldn't eat rice, he doesn't eat yam, he doesn't eat cake, then pancakes sometimes. He doesn't eat swallow, he doesn't eat. So you could see how limited he already eats. He doesn't eat meat. And now you are telling me to do a diet when that child is not already eating. I'm already complaining he's not eating.
Hmm.
So I think I got to a point where I said, you know what? It's not everything you must do. So it's being able to draw that line because you feel you are in a race you want to win and you're willing to do anything. I'm not saying don't seek advice. I'm not saying don't search, but know where to draw the line.
Yeah, thank you very much. I truly truly appreciate that, and I'm sure a lot of people would really really appreciate that. I think it is very very important to become an expert of your own child, and not just become a wild expert at everything and trying everything. I think that's very very important. Rounding up, I would like to ask this question: what concerns, if any, do you have about your son's future?
Can I be completely honest with you?
Yeah,
I don't think I have any. I swear to God. I don't think I have any because I know he's gonna remember I told you I said my son is very independent, that the independence is now almost like a hindrance because I want him to come and ask me for something. He
yeah,
believes he does not need to ask, he will go and do it. The only time my son will tell me I want to pee pee or I want to go and poo is maybe because I'm engaging him in an activity and he knows he cannot leave. That's when he will not tell me. But if he's just watching TV or playing, he just goes to the toilet and uses. He's independent. So no, I do not have any fear or worry by the special grace of God. I've never thought of anything in that light.
yeah, that's amazing. That's really, really amazing. This was the
Yeah.
answer I was truly hoping for, and I'm glad I got the exact answer that I had in my head. Um, can can you really is it possible for you to kind of give some pointers, like educate our listeners on how to interact with an autistic child? And this goes for the general public, extended families, or just anyone who might come across an autistic child in their day-to-day lives. Can you maybe give some pointers and of how they should interact, of how best to interact with in such situations?
When we all have, when you are out and you suspect that the child has some form of challenge, if you, you don't always have to step in, but you see, sometimes looking can make the mother or the family member tensed. If you can ignore, good. If you want to step in, be nice and be kind in a playful way.
Hmm.
Because sometimes the mother might actually need help, like need relief. Just relieve me from this sometimes. But if you cannot do that, don't point, don't give a side look, don't be quick to condemn or make a comment. Like I remember when I recently went to England with my son and I was coming back in the plane and my son sings very loud. I told you he likes music. And the lady in front of me had said, "Ha, is he going to be quiet today? I would like to sleep." Oh. I went quiet. I didn't say anything. You get what I mean? I
Yeah.
just I just didn't have the energy. I'm not saying what my son was doing was right too.
Yeah.
But trust me, you would rather he's singing than he's upset or having a meltdown. Because by the time that meltdown starts, you yourself will be looking for a way to beg him. So I just ignored her. But that kind of like, I looked at her like, nah, everybody wants to sleep. Then at some point, my son was singing so loud, and my daughter was like, Mommy, are you going to tell him to keep quiet? I said, I can't. So a man stood up and said, Oh my God, somebody's very excited. That kind of lightened the mood. So if anybody else felt this child was making noise, that man's comments just like everybody just giggled and we just kept it moving.
Yeah.
You
Almost
know,
like you
if
broke
you
the
can't say
ice.
something nice, ignore, ignore,
Yeah.
because it's tough enough. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. And you know, we are a society of where, okay, let me make an example. In Nigeria, parents go out. I remember when I was young and I go out with my parents, you are not allowed to misbehave. When you're running around the house, you're misbehaving. No, no, no. My parents believe you sit down and you have a conversation. When they talk to you, you talk. When they ask you a question, but if not, it was if in the Western world you go somewhere, you see the parents sitting down, the children are doing handstand, they are cartwheeling, and the parents just act as if they don't see it. It's like it's normal. You get what I mean? But in Africa, if that happens, people are looking like you like, this man is not just training a child properly, oh, But honestly, the Western world give children freedom to express themselves, and that is what children are supposed to do. You know what I mean? So now already, even with neurotypical children, we expect a certain behavior from them. So they do not understand how a child can be neurodiverse and yet you are still expecting the same behavior. So when the child is not doing things, you are quick to judge. We have to change. Just let children be children. Neurotypical, neurodiverse, just let children be children. And with, yes, a little bit of guidance, yes, but just let them be.
Mm.
Let them be.
Mm. Play is very, very important. I don't know if parents in Nigeria and Africa don't know that, but like you said, play is absolutely important. Rough and tumble.
It's part of learning.
Yeah, it's absolutely normal. And yeah, I guess my last question would be because speaking about play right now, and how should parents educate their children to be friends with an autistic child? Because I think this is
You
very, very
ask your
important.
wait, you ask yourself first. Those parents that know that their friends have autistic children, how are they? See, a child exhibits the behavior of their parent.
Mm.
Is what how you behave. Your child is like a reflection,
Hmm.
if you get what I mean.
Yeah.
So it starts from the adult before it trickles down to the children. And adults are very difficult to teach. So I think what it really should be is how, in general, we need to just educate everybody. And like I said before, empathy. If we have empathy, if there is understanding. Like I was talking to a friend of mine who lives in America the other day, and she told me something. She said, My son has this boy in his class. He's I think partially deaf and blind. He said, but Ehi, do you know my son does not see that boy's disability? He doesn't see that the boy isn't he's partially blind. He doesn't see it as he's less of me. So I think we just you just have to make people see we are all one, regardless of our challenges. Parents have to educate their children to love.
Hmm.
I don't know how, like for me now, I have, or even before I had my son, I've always been open to everybody. But now that I even have my son, has just made me more compassionate. Oh my God. Like the other day, I dropped my son in the center and a girl was crying. And also because my son doesn't like to hear the sound of cry. And the nanny was just coming. And I immediately stopped the nanny and I embraced the girl to calm her down. I was just rubbing her back and I noticed she went quiet. And I turned to the nanny. I said, "Do you like the way you're bringing her in and she's crying? Stop and just cuddle her. Maybe she just wants that warmth."
Mm.
She doesn't know me, I don't know her, but I'm a mom with a child, and I immediately just swung into action, just rubbing her, and it made ease of everything, you know? So a mother has to know how to react in a situation and lead their child.
Hmm.
If I don't know if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That's why I will still say it has to start from the top because these children exhibit what they have seen or what they have been taught. I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, I really, really appreciate that a lot, and thank you very much for who you are and who you continue to be. Um, is that where can people actually find you on social media online? Because I talked about your page that you use to create awareness and educates the public on autism. And I know we can, if we stay here today, we'll just keep going. And I know you actually have some other things to do. And I really appreciate you for taking the time to come on to have this conversation with me. But where can people actually find you online to, if they want to, like, maybe send a DM or talk about their specific cases, or just follow you so they can always get and watch your videos whenever they drop and things like that?
I have an Instagram page, ebiosage at Gmail. My handle is ebiosage on Instagram, and that is where I'm most active. And I do respond to every DM. If I think you need further assistance, which I've done with a few people, I do collect their number and we chat further on WhatsApp. But my Instagram is open, so anybody can send me a message there if you have any questions. I'm
Okay.
always open to answering questions and pointing you in the right direction.
Yeah. So, permit me to ask this question. Since you say sometimes you sometimes have personal conversations with them further on WhatsApp and things like that, have you thought about maybe having a group, like building a community for parents with autistic children?
Yes, I have thought about that.
Okay.
It's something I'm going to do in the long run. Yes, I have.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I
I'm
have.
sure that will be very, very helpful to a lot of people because informations can easily be shared and people can see other people who are going through similar situations like them. And that's, I know for a fact, is very, very encouraging. Understanding you are not alone is a very, very important aspect of recovery
Yes,
and going through anything. So yeah.
but
So like I said, thank you very, very, very much. I truly, truly appreciate this. And I'm very, very sure we'll do this again in the future. I don't know. I just have that feeling.
hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. Thank you very much
Yes,
once more.
thank
I
you
would
for having
attach,
me.
yeah, yeah, you're totally welcome. I would attach your usernames and your social media handles to the episode so people can easily just click on it and find you. So once again, thank you very much for taking the time to have this conversation with me, and do enjoy the
Thank
rest of
you.
your day.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, bye.
Thank you. Have a good day.